Hello, everyone. My name is Pamela. I'm a random Android engineer, and today we're with the Modern Android development gang. So everyone is here from Chet to Florina, and we're going to start asking a bunch of amazing questions from your side. So don't hold back. We're going to start with just some introductions from the gang side. So let's get started with Florina.
And first I need to find where the unmute button is. Hi, I'm Florina. I'm a developer advocate at Google, and I work on architecture components and Kotlin and a little bit of Compose, but that's outside the topic for today, and on architecture.
Hi everyone, I'm Manuel Vivo. I'm also an Android engineer in the developer relations team at Google. Here I can answer questions about coroutines, health, and random app architecture questions as well.
Hi there, I'm Jose rreca, also a developer relations engineer. I work on Compose, testing, architecture, and I did write single live event, even though we removed it afterwards.
Hey everyone, I'm Wojtek. I'm also a developer advocate on the developer relations team in Android. I work on Kotlin, Studio, and Google Play. So I got 3 out of 4 of the MAD pillars.
Hi, I'm Chris Warrington. I'm a software engineer on the Android Gradle plugin. My expertise doesn't extend much beyond that, but hopefully I can answer some questions usefully.
I'll go. I don't actually know who's introducing themselves when. I'm Chet. I am also on the developer relations team. I can answer random questions and random topics, and if I can't answer them, someone else will.
And hi, I'm Romain, and I'm the only one who's not part of DevRel, so I'm not sure if I should be here. So anyway, I manage the Android Toolkit team.
Chris as well. Chris is the engineer on Android Studio.
I feel better.
All right, so everyone, you can start asking your questions in the Slido, but let's get started with a thread that Florina started a little bit earlier in this week that people basically tweeted at her different questions for the MAD gang. So the first question was, why have you not added single live event to Jetpack a long time ago? Another solution for events with live data.
Okay, I'll take this one. The reason is that the team wanted to keep live data simple, and introducing something in the library that dispatches an event once to all active observers, even if they have modified this value, would require basically a new live data. So single live event and my preferred option, the event wrapper, are really patterns that can only be used if you understand very well that you can't have 2 active observers at the same time. So this is really a lifecycle problem. You need to understand how your app is observing the live data. If, for example, there are 2 active observers subscribed to a snack bar event, which one is going to show the snack bar? The first one, the last one? Also, the new shared flow is really not going to solve this problem either. And also, technically, if you use them, you're mutating state, which is a bad rule to break. So yeah, all these problems, I think they make it a stopper for an architecture components library, but fine if you add it to an app and understand it. In any case, we're working on adding guidance about this in the documentation.
The keyword for 2020 is I'm on mute, my motto, personal motto. So the next question is, why is Android Studio increasing in RAM consumption when running the same project for a long time?
I can take this one. So first of all, that sounds bad. It's probably a memory leak. It's definitely not intended. The good news is these are usually a very high priority for the Android Studio team. My advice would be, first of all, to try a newer version of Android Studio. So if you're unstable, maybe try the beta or the canary and check if the problem persists. And if yes, please file a bug. Our bug tracker is on b.android.com. And you can find information there on what kind of information you need to help the team track it down. Another piece of advice would be to look at any additional plugins you might have installed in the Android Studio IDE. And if they don't come from the Android Studio team, just double check if the memory leak persists if you try to turn off these plugins, because they can sometimes introduce problems as well.
Cool. Thank you, Wojtek. What does your dog think about the question? Because I see he's asleep, but I'm not really sure what he's thinking about that question.
She's listening very carefully if I'm answering correctly. She'll let me know.
Okay. She's going to jump in, just to fix things. Okay, great. So the next question is, when will the AGP documentation be updated for Kotlin?
I can take this one. Yeah, I assume you're talking about the new Kotlin Gradle DSL. We've actually been working to support that better, but we can't recommend it yet because there are still some things that make it kind of worse than the Groovy DSL support. There's some performance issues, and there's some, I guess the stricter compatibility that you get from the more statically typed stuff makes upgrades potentially harder. But we're working on addressing both of those, having a better DSL going forward, having it better documented, and yeah, when we're ready, we're going to document it. Yeah, this might come up soon. We'll see whether we meet our criteria for being able to definitely recommend it after 4.2.
Thanks, Chris. Really looking forward to that. It's going to be amazing to be able to, just code in Kotlin all the time, everywhere. Okay, our next question is, why can't we upload self-signed APKs by creating them as an output for our bundle tool? So I think Wojtek is probably like rearing to go for this question. So
yeah,
go ahead, Wojtek.
Since I've just had a talk about play app signing, I'm probably the right person to answer that one. There's a couple of reasons. So first of all, the real reason why play app signing is important and why it was even created in the first place is that key security has historically been a very hard thing to manage for developers. And play app signing is just a much more secure model for a vast majority of developers. Maybe not counting some of the largest ones who can afford actually creating processes and infrastructure required to manage their own keys. And the second thing is we want to make publishing simpler. So with play app signing and with app bundles, you only upload one artifact with one version code. And there's a lot less space for error, for mistakes when publishing. And managing multiple APKs is just not an ideal model. The vision is to reduce the complexity rather than add more complexity. And besides, running bundle tool on the server as opposed to making developers run bundle tool locally opens up possibilities for even more optimizations in the future. So if you run it locally, you produce APKs, everything's set in stone, nothing can be changed. If we run it on the server, our infrastructure can continuously get better and better. But that said, this is not a question that surprises me. I've heard it before, and we are taking that feedback. Obviously, next year, if we want to make app bundles a requirement for everyone, we have to take these voices into account. So we'll be thinking about maybe if there are any possible solutions to this. So thanks for the feedback.
Oh, thank you. Our next question is for Florina. How are our services supposed to be used in the MVVM architecture format?
Yeah, so the model view model pattern is a pattern for the UI. That's why you have the view and the view model there, and the model, that's the one that's being displayed on the UI. Therefore, services actually shouldn't belong at all in the MVVM world. You should actually use it somewhere on the data layer. So probably you want to use it somewhere like in the repository or lower layer.
True. Thank you. Okay, we're starting with our live questions. So let's get started. What, if any, improvements are planned to the issue tracker? Reporting bugs in all those new fancy libraries are insanely frustrating, and the tracker has terrible UX. Often there's no response. Compared to UTrack, issue tracker is far from modern. Who wants to venture?
I'll take that. I'll take that one. There are no improvements that are planned as far as we know. If that can make you feel better, this is the same issue tracker we use internally at Google. So yeah, you don't like the UI, sorry. I guess we're used to it. As for the lack of response, well, that's something we can do better. There's a large influx of bugs that come our way, both for platforms and Jetpack. So we try to answer as many as possible. But frankly, it's not humanly possible to give an answer to every single bug. So yeah, please keep the bugs coming. We do appreciate them a lot. The ones we can look at, like, it's been extremely valuable. For some things, for instance, for Jetpack Compose, there are other ways to reach us. For instance, there's a Slack channel for Compose on the Kotlin Lang Slack. So this is a good way to ask us to pay more attention to some of the bugs. But yeah, and UTrack, unfortunately, I've never used it. I'm sure it's great, but that's not what we use.
Cool, thanks, Romain. Another question for you, perhaps. Apple recently released widgets. Given that we haven't had any updates to the Android widgets for a long time, are there any plans to update them?
I'm going to channel my inner Chet here and say we do not talk about the future. So we don't talk about things that we haven't announced. But widgets have been along for a very long time. At least, they're compatible all the way back to Android 1.5. So for once, it's something that, works well across different API levels.
Cool. Any plans towards decoupling those pieces of tooling that are still moving slowly? Android Studio releases are still few and far between, and AGP, Android Lint, R8, data view binding, and all would be benefit from a faster paced development and releases. Who would like to try?
Yeah, I can take this one. Yeah, we definitely know this is a problem ourselves as well, and we've been thinking about it quite hard. Separating the things out, as I'm sure some of you have had to go through similar processes, is not trivial. And so we've been kind of weighing up whether it's worth doing at this point or whether we should punt doing it later. But yeah, we're definitely trying to figure out not just that, but also making upgrades more seamless and making it just easier for people to stay on the latest. One thing that I think people often miss is that you can open older projects in newer Studio. So modulo bugs, you should never actually need to keep around older versions of Android Studio. You should be able to open all of your projects in the latest version.
So this is an interesting question, but perhaps not one for the team, but you might as well venture a guess. So how would you see Android's future along with future OS roadmap and offered experience? Would you see that as an integrated ecosystem or replacing Android? So my pet name for future OS is Magenta, because I'm clearly a little interested in colors, but not so much the words. Anybody want to take that one?
Well, we are part of the Android team, so we can certainly not talk about the product from a different team. And as far as I know, nothing has been announced regarding Fuchsia, so we can't answer that question. And actually, even if we could, we probably wouldn't, because like I said, we don't talk about future plans.
All right. I guess that's fine. Future plans. Can't twist your arm a little bit. Future plans? No, not even on live droidCon. No. Oh, sorry. Chet says no in the chat. I'm waiting for the big no. The big no, Chet. Okay, so one modern approach to dev is decoupling as much from the Android framework Yet most Jetpack libraries are coupled with a framework, even if not needed. So architecture, executor-based, view model, live data. Will this ever change? Manuel.
Yeah, I can text this one. So most of our Jetpack libraries are opinionated, and that means that we want to make it easier for people to use them in Android. And being opinionated means actually that we are making some decisions for you. And those decisions, if it's an Android app, it's going to be Android-based. So I don't know if this will ever change in the future, but at least that's how it works at the moment, to be honest.
Okay, so what would you say is the plan? The next question is, what is the plan with live data now that coroutines are officially supported? That's an interesting one.
I can take this one as well. So with live data, it still has a place in the Android architectural space. So for example, if you think about Java users, it is a problem that it is trying to solve. And also, on the other hand, we have the coroutine solution that it is not completely fleshed out for Android developers. So we have the suspending APIs like launch when started and things like that that are useful in some cases, but not in all of them. So live data still has a place at the moment, although we are planning to add more features to coroutines from the Android side so that we can see all those pieces connected together. And at some point, if you're in a Kotlin-only application, you will be able to use a coroutine-only architecture. But at the moment, live data is important for some use cases, and we are planning to update the documentation to reflect those.
Thanks so much. Okay, our next question is about bottom navigation. So with bottom navigation becoming more and more prevalent, how far is the support for multiple parallel backstacks? That sounds like a nightmare. The feature request is very popular, over 600 stars.
Yeah, I can take this one. I mean, the answer is pretty simple. Version 2.40 alpha 01, the latest update from EN was pretty clear. The reason why it's taking so long is that it requires a complete rewrite of fragments. So this is obviously not trivial, but if it's been announced for the next version of navigation, I'm sure we'll see this very, very soon. Also, please don't send updates to the bug saying any updates on this one, because it sends 600 emails and we are all subscribed to it. So thanks.
All right, next question. Are Jetpack libraries planning to become Kotlin multi-platform compatible, or are they bound to remain Java bound forever and ever? Thinking of room, navigation, live data.
So support for Kotlin multi-platform is something that we've been looking into, and there were a few experiments. You've seen some of our Jetpack libraries are now available on GitHub. This was one of the reasons why we did that. It was to experiment there. Unfortunately, we have a lot of work to do, and this is, one of the many things that we want to do. So we can't make any promises, and as always, we don't talk about the future, but it's on the back of our minds. Just keep asking about it. Maybe it will happen.
Chet says no. Okay, so the next question, any plans to make libraries share between apps? Probably install the separate APKs. This would hugely reduce APK size by sharing Jetpack, Kotlin runtime, and so on. I can see Wojtek is chomping at the bits for this one.
I mean, I just wanted to say that some exploratory work has been done or had been done some time ago in the platform to have shared APIs, shared libraries between apps. However, that was never productionized for third-party developers, so it's not currently available. The truth is, it almost creates more problems than it solves, so it's very difficult to get it right. That said, I don't have the full context there. Maybe Romain, you want to add anything?
I can say a little more. So we look at this regularly, especially now with Jetpack. A lot of apps have the same libraries. When we look in detail, one of the problems that we see is that many apps use different versions of the libraries. And so in practice, when we basically do simulations, the size gains are not there, especially when folks use optimizers like ProgGuard and R8. So the only way we could truly optimize for size would be to basically snap applications to certain versions of the libraries. So you could imagine a model where maybe like you never get like the 1.1.1, but maybe you get 1.1 point something else because other apps have that something else. And this could potentially create compatibility issues, something we're trying very hard to avoid in Jetpack. Anyway, so this is something we look at regularly, and when we see like a good path forward that is easy for developers, does not create more confusion or more problems, and does give good savings, we'll probably take a closer look at it.
Cool. Our next question is for Florina. Isn't having an application reference in Android view model considered to be an anti-pattern? Do you have any plans to refactor or rethink this part?
Yeah, I agree. Using an Android view model is not the best choice, but I would say that the best choice is to use the view model directly and use the view model factory. The Android view model eases some use cases, but I agree. Consider not using it and just using the view model. Therefore, I don't think we necessarily need to refactor something because already we have a solution. But indeed, you will see that we're not using it that much, at least in some of our samples and code labs and so on.
Cool, thanks, Florina. So our next question is, how do you feel about the constantly changing Android landscape? Keeping up with the latest trends is really hard with outside commitments like kids. So would you see this as a hurdle for having a developer community representative of the general population?
So I can talk about this a little bit. So first of all, I think this is both, a blessing and a curse. This means that Android is not standing still, and we, both on the Android team and as a developer community, we are not content with the status quo, and we're always looking for better solutions. But please know that this is something every time, we introduce new libraries or new APIs, or we talk about making changes. This always comes in our conversations, right? Like we are aware of that effect on you, and we try to limit it as much as possible. But it's true that sometimes the benefits are huge, especially in the long term. So we go ahead anyway. The key is to remember that you do not have to use every single new thing, right? Android is now came out in 2008. There have been many successful apps since then, and a lot of those apps have been built without the latest and greatest in terms of architecture, libraries, and so on. So if what you have works for you, you should not feel compelled or obligated to move to the new shiny thing. We certainly encourage it if you're going to start a new project, or if you're going to go through a big refactoring, or if you see a huge benefit for yourself. But first and foremost, your goal is to build the best application for your own users. So please do what's best for that. We're just here to provide support. We're not telling you what to do.
If I can hop in on this one as well, a lot of the stuff that we've been doing recently in the last few releases, the last few years, is looking at the problems that developers have and trying to solve those. This certainly speaks to architecture components, some of the platform APIs as well. And so what we're actually trying to do is make things easier, but again, all of these things, are optional. We put them out there for you to integrate with as you have time and capability to learn and use these things. We're also taking an approach of trying to make our stuff easier to consume going forward. So all of the privacy changes that we've been making more and more of in the releases for obvious reasons to protect user data and users in general can be hard to consume if you have to update your app every single time for every single change. And so we've been making those more and more targeted behind API versions so that they are optional. If you're not updating your app immediately, then you don't need to consume them immediately. It gives you a little bit more time to update. So yeah, there is a wide swath of stuff coming out all the time. Android X releases every single 2 weeks, but not all of those releases, not all of those features are things that you need to consume immediately. It's just there as an option as you have time and priority to do those things.
Thank you. All right. Any plans on fixing the deeper Android problems, the ones that have been there since day one? For example, overly complex life cycles, activity, implementing context, and so on.
So that's an interesting question, because this is basically someone asking the opposite of the previous question. You want us to change things? And the answer here is it's difficult. We do have regrets around some of our APIs or design decisions, and I think Android overall has been doing a pretty good job considering about making big complex rewrites of the operating system under the hood, but it always goes back to compatibility, right? So for instance, activity implementing context, if we try to fix that one, that would break a lot of stuff. The alternative would be to have, a new activity too, but that would be part of a new version of the platform, and nobody will start using it for many, many years, which will not really solve this problem. So we try to fix as much as we can through Jetpack. For instance, Jetpack Compose is a great example of us doing this at a large scale, where we will still underneath have to use a view because that's what the system understands. But as soon as you step into the Jetpack Compose world, those views will be hidden from you. But because compatibility is so important, we'll have two-way compatibility. So yeah, we try to fix that, but we need to be careful because we have an ecosystem and we want to make sure that ecosystem stays healthy.
Thank you. Florina, any advantage using data store as opposed to shared prefs?
Yes, you're able to do asynchronous tasks easily. By default, data store does the work on the UI thread. It guarantees that data is saved atomically and transactionally. I would say TLDR, check out the talk I gave earlier, and if a talk is not something that you prefer, then check out the docs. Yeah.
Perfect answer, thank you. Our next question is, do you believe flow is the best way to communicate between view model and model? Who'd like to take that? I
can take this one. I don't really understand that model bit, but we 100% recommend using flow in the lower layers of your architecture. So repo layer, data source layer, it is fine there. And then as I was mentioning previously, depending on your needs, using it in the UI layer might be the right choice or not. So at the moment, before Stateflow and other solutions become more stable, live data is our recommendation. But yeah, so keep using Flow in the lower layers, and let's see what happens in the future with the UI layer.
Manu, is it the lower layers or the highest layers? Because we've been bike sitting for hours on this, and we didn't really reach a conclusion.
Depending on how you say it, lower layer, I meant repo layer, data source layer, up and down, I don't know.
Yeah, for me, it's farther from the user, right, from the UI. So for me, it's also lower, but I don't know.
Cool. Our next question is, for Android Studio development, does stability or innovation take priority?
I can take this. Maybe Chris wants to weigh in. I think it depends. It's difficult to just have one answer for this question. Depending on what is needed at the time, this can change. There was obviously this time when we had Project Marble when there was a huge focus on stability, and that's because we talked to developers, we did surveys. It turned out that Android Studio's quality was maybe not exactly up to par with what developers expected, and so there was this huge focus on fixing the largest memory leaks, freezes, because it was needed at the time. And so the team can switch, I would say, between those two modes. But innovation is also always important, right? We want to have both the most stable IDE for developers, but we also have to keep adding stuff so that they can build better apps. So it changes, it depends.
Yeah, and I think
thank you.
I would add, from the Marble effort, I think we've been holding ourselves to a bit of a higher bar than we used to about making sure that the new innovations don't come at the expense of the stability of the rest of the studio. Yeah, this is still a big focus for us. So if these issues are hurting your day-to-day development, please do file bugs. You can do it from within Android Studio, and it will collect all the required information. Yeah, we're still very actively pursuing that stuff. But yeah, it's the balance. We have to figure out how to not just stop everything because the world moves, the platform moves. We need to keep up, but we also we're also very conscious that having a really rock solid foundation is really important.
Thank you. That's a great answer. So a question about health. Components are scoped by types, so fragment view and so on, which makes all the dependencies available, such as by all fragments. What is the proposed approach for limiting access to certain features or functionality? Maybe Manuel.
Yeah, I can take this one. So as I was mentioning before, here's is an opinionated library, so it's going to make some decisions for you. And probably the strong decision that we make is that we use monolithic components. That's why the same component, not the instance, but the definition of the component is going to be shared by all the fragments or activities in your app. And the solution for the question is actually using qualifiers. So there are some annotations that you can use to actually restrict the scope or where you want that option or that binding to be available.
A good question here is, how do we convince our PM to move to Kotlin? So anybody wants to venture something?
Anyone want to start, or should I go? Yeah, so first of all, I recommend everyone to check out our new documentation page on developer.android.com/Kotlin. There is a page with case studies where we've talked to both external and internal teams to get their experience with Kotlin and with moving their apps to Kotlin. And there's some really great metrics in there. And I know PMs love looking at metrics, right? So we have things like apps who adopted Kotlin saw lower crash rates. They saw more productivity throughout their engineering teams. So for a while we've been saying that because we believed that to be true about Kotlin, but we didn't have anything to back it up. But now you can actually go and show your PMs, hey, look at this company. They adopted Kotlin and they got X gains in, crash-free rates. So I would say that's the first thing you should talk to the PM about. Anyone else? More ideas?
I would add that if switching to Kotlin will make the engineering team happy, that sounds like a great great thing to do for the team. So please do what makes the engineers happy.
Indeed.
It will be more productive this way.
Yes. Is there a plan to update data binding to work directly with Flow like it does with live data?
I can take this one. So we don't usually talk about future development, but we're going to make an exception on this one. And this is because it's actually happening now. So we, in Android Studio 4.3, we are going to add support to state flow in data binding. So we don't know in which canary it will be available, but the feature development is pretty much complete. And so we are just seeing when is the best time to make it available to the developers. And so as you probably noticed, I said state flow. And so it is not going to come with support for any regular flow. And this is because the implementation itself is quite difficult. Because imagine with live data or state flow, you can get the current value of what's in it and what's in the stream of data. But with flow, that's not possible. And so that would require kind of a bit of a refactoring in data binding itself. And I don't know, or we don't know, the team doesn't know if that's going to be worth it and if we are going to do it in the end. But state flow is coming.
Amazing, thank you. So a question about the keyboard, the contentious keyboard. Are you planning to develop stable, reliable, even on Samsung, keyboard soft input API? Chet, would you like to take that?
Sure. This one confused me at first. Actually, we decided to punt it because it sounded like a question about platform as well as future development. Because I was confused. We have an IME API. We've had that since, I believe it was 1.5. But I was informed. Chris Baines is in the background saying, hey, I think they're talking about the window insets API and IME animations. So in that case, we are apparently working on a Jetpack library. I talked to the team, maybe it was on the podcast or just in some meetings a while back about IME animations and what we could do in Jetpack and unbundled libraries. Instead of just platform. And there are some dependencies on platform capabilities. Whenever you're talking to the Windows system server, the window manager, like that stuff lives in the platform, and we can't really unbundle that. So there are some things about synchronizing the keyboard animation and the application with the window manager that are probably not possible to unbundle, but they are working on unbundling some of the capabilities. There's a Jetpack library, as I said, in development. I think there are some CLs checked in. Maybe it's not actually announced yet, but there is some code in AOSP if you want to check it out. It does allow you to control the IME to some extent. It's just that the experience would be a little bit different than you're going to get when using the platform APIs that have all of the bells and whistles in them.
So there's an anonymous question about that is going to put all the Googlers on the spot. And in the chat, I wrote, muhahaha. So when someone asks, when is X going to be stable, camera X, compose, blah, 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 the answer always seems we can't commit to dates, or Chet says no. Do you think that the community would benefit from better visibility from Google, even if only estimated dates?
The thing is that, what if we can't commit to those dates? So we would give you a date, but then it slips. So I don't know, would that be really helpful? At the same time, I think that's why we are releasing the libraries, for example, in alpha, so we can get feedback. So we can't really, or it's hard to commit to a date when, hey, we got some new issues that we didn't know about, and we need to, or we want to make sure that we're not releasing the libraries with those kind of issues. So it really makes things hard for us to say, oh, next year and so on.
It seems like we've lost Florina. Are you back?
I am back, but it felt like someone was saying something. Sorry.
We lost the last half of you. I was about to hop in, and then you blipped back in and out. I don't know if you want to recomplete what you were saying.
TLDR was, we want to make the libraries better, therefore we can't commit to dates.
Florina was just dates when she, was cut off. That's why. Sorry.
Just to expand on that a little bit, a lot of the teams working on those libraries also work on other projects, and priorities can shift. We are usually involved in many different things, which is why it's hard for us to predict the future. And also the very, it's interesting in the question, the person asking the question mentions explicitly Camera X and Compose, which are both very open-ended problems. And it would be very hard for us to put a date on when we think the problem is solved, or at least solved enough to be stable. Which is why, again, like to Florina's point, like we go through those alpha beta cycle, because we need to hear from you to know when it's good enough to be stable.
Cool. One of our last questions is, it's first a statement and a compliment. Thanks for all the awesome talks, and a huge fan of Kotlin Tips videos. Special thanks to Florina. Question to the team: why did you give up on the dessert names for Android releases?
I'll go ahead and take the compliment. Anybody else want to take the question? So I actually feel deeply about this one. I agree. I'm sort of sad to see dessert names go away. On the other hand, they didn't. The reasoning was that we actually had, is it 3 different names? So any particular release has an API version. It has the normal dot version, Android 10, Android 11, and then it also had a dessert name. And I think developers can grok that pretty easily. And honestly, I think more in terms of like the features that were in a dessert name than the numbers that get all jumbled in my head. But I think it makes it confusing in the broader world. And Android has gone through many, many changes as it grew from like this little tiny startup to this, yet another smartphone in the market to the massive ecosystem that we have out there today. And we have to make changes that make it more reasonable for more people to understand what's going on. And so I think the addition of the dessert name on top of the other two numbers that were floating out there just made it a little bit too much information. And so they eliminated one of them. On the other hand, it still exists. It's still in the code, right? During development, we always have code letters that are associated with an underlying dessert name. So I think the true essence of dessert has not gone away. It's just that we don't really promote it in a way that makes its way, unfortunately, into the consumer space where it really wasn't intended to be to begin with.
Cool. So we have like less than a few seconds left.
Hey, Pamela. Pamela, yeah. This is the voice from nowhere. This is Greg. Hey, I've just been following this panel since the beginning. We're going to let this run a little bit longer over time because we do have so many important questions. If you could start at the top, the ones that have been voted on the most, because those are the ones that have the most interest. But we're going to try to let this go a little bit longer because there's so many great questions. And we're basically at the end of the day, and we want to keep all these wonderful Googlers in their seats for a little bit longer. So, all right.
Amazing.
So we're going to let you run a little while longer, okay?
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So now that I have you all captive, I actually had a icebreaker question that I wanted to ask you. Favorite Android dessert? Florina. The favorite Android dessert name?
Oh, I actually reviewed a project today that was all about donuts. So I have to say donut. I've been craving donuts ever since I was looking at that project.
What is that, Chet? I can't see.
It's an apple fritter, which is not strictly a donut, but it works for me on a Friday morning.
Wojtek.
I would have to say ice cream sandwich. It reminds me of these weird ice cream packets I would buy in the shop in Poland when I was really, really young, and they were really good.
Cool. So we're starting at the top with the most popular questions again. When will Flutter be officially endorsed by the Android team?
Next.
I can answer that one. Flutter is not by the Android team, so that's a question. I mean, Flutter questions are for the Flutter team, not for the Android team.
Okay.
Modern Android development questions. Mad questions.
They said from the top. Why is data binding not working with the merge tag, and when will it work? The question is anonymous.
Sorry, could you repeat? I didn't quite hear you.
Why is data binding not working with the merge tag, and when will it work?
That is
we don't know. Probably there is a bug for it already, hopefully. And yeah, I don't think we have anyone from the data binding team here. So
yeah, I would suggest checking out the official issue tracker and creating a bug for it, and then you'll know when it will work.
Yeah, somebody is actually asking here, are there plans to actually kill data binding? I see that a lot of the feature development has slowed down. So.
I'm just going to say there aren't always going to be new features, right? We got it to a point where it was great, it was usable. A lot of the bugs were fixed. A lot of feature requests were fulfilled. And at this point, I think the technology is going to live on. But with Compose coming in the future, we'll probably start to have to rethink, where we put our resources, and if data binding even has a place in the Compose world, probably not. So I would say, we're going to have to support it similar to how we will support the view system for a while, but maybe not necessarily invest a lot of time into new features.
I want to hop in here too. I think also there's evolution of software in general and features overall where we saw data binding addressing a specific concern and limitation of the platform at that time. And now we're coming online with other capabilities that are maybe a broader solution to that, like the Jetpack Compose programming model. But also view binding came out in the last year, which you can think of as like a really stripped down data binding to a core piece that a lot of people wanted, just to get rid of find view by ID. And so in that sense, it lives on for a really important use case. And in another sense, maybe there are better ways to accomplish what it originally needed. In the meantime, it's there. If you use it, great. But maybe active development on a feature doesn't mean that it's a wrong thing to use. It just means that, it's sort of done for what it is.
Yeah, also view binding was developed by the same team as data binding, so we don't see it as data binding being slowed down. They were just focusing on something else. I'm just checking, and as I suspected, the usage is actually still going up of data binding. And as Manuel said, we're adding flow support, so yeah, it's not dead at all.
To add on or to reiterate something that Wojtek was saying, the amount of time we invest in a library will definitely decrease with time. We get actually the same question, like, are there plans to kill library X for a lot of libraries, even, I don't know, Room, for example. Okay, we didn't do a lot of it, but also because there aren't a lot of new features that are requested a lot, or a lot of like major bugs. So it just means that, okay, we're slowing down the development of that specific library, but it doesn't mean that we're abandoning it, or even worse, that we're not recommending using that specific library.
Cool. So a more general question is, in most tech areas, there's an many official certificates to measure progress and career level. What do you recommend for Android, or is there something planned?
I know that we have an associate Android developer certificate program, but I know that that's for beginners. I know that, so right now we've been launching the pathway, so that's a way to, track some of the progress that you've been making, of getting badges for doing different pathways. So I think that's another way of let's say, tracking the amount of knowledge that you've gathered with time. But we don't have anything specific that would track career level that I know of.
Something more side notey, Android TV is getting a lot of traction, but releases for new leanback versions is really slow. So Android 11 has a developer preview that's not available for everyone, as it's only available on the ADT3. Are there any more plans for better TV support? I'm not sure if this is really relevant for this panel, but maybe somebody wants to try.
It's not really related to MAD. I think more importantly, like, I'd love to jump in and answer it, but I'm not sure that the people on this particular call are the experts to actually answer that. If anybody is, please jump in. It's not me.
A whole lot of no's. Okay. So is there a plan to deprecate the hamburger menus? The current gesture navigation with the hamburger menus are really bad, I think.
At the risk of repeating myself, we do not talk about future plans. Sorry about that. But also, unfortunately, that question will be better asked to the UX teams. And unfortunately, we don't have someone from UX here.
So I'm just filtering through all there's no future plans, or talking about future plans, or blah, 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 future plans. Let's have a look. So we have a video streaming one. Let's quickly venture that one. Hi, thanks for all the great talks. I agree. Any modern way, high level of implementing an RTSP video streaming client app on Android? XO Player does not support it. Android Media Player does not support tweaking the buffering strategy. Anyone want to try?
I'm probably going to give the same answer I gave last time because I think it applies here. It's not related to what we're answering questions on. Also, I'm looking at the people here and thinking maybe we don't have the right media people to answer that reliably. Maybe Romain has an opinion on it or anybody else, but otherwise, I think we'll pass.
I have opinions on video, but not this one specifically. It's interesting because I feel like some of our answers may be a little frustrating, and I apologize for that. I do miss the days when the Android platform was small enough that any of us could know all the answers. It's not the case anymore, unfortunately. So that would be a great question to ask the media team, but we can take it to them and somehow tell you somewhere.
Florina, you were saying something about something?
Just that I can answer another question, that's all.
Oh, okay, sorry. How can we improve and handle UI tests that are flaky? Are there alternative solutions to espresso?
Right. I mean, this is a very big question, right? There's no 1 minute answer to this. UI tests are hard to get right, and the reason is probably that Android is 11 years old, and when everything started, nobody really thought about UI tests in the future, right? So we have a lot of flakiness in our tests, and the solutions are normally to isolate and to try to mock or fake as much as possible. Now, the good news is that with Compose, I think because it started with testing in mind, I think a lot of the problems are going to go away because the team is doing an absolutely amazing job. Not all of them. We're still going to have life cycles. We're still going to have to deal with file-based authenticator and authentication and things like that you will have to fake or bypass. But definitely the future is much, much brighter.
Thank you. When can we expect to have app bundles supported in Firebase app distribution?
So I don't know anything about this part, but I actually got this question as well on Twitter, and the product manager of app distribution replied saying that they're working on it. And they might even do some early access. Yeah, so I hope that's an answer that's better than no answer.
And then another question on Hilt. Are there any updates for the next releases? Maybe just a sneaky preview? Sneak?
Yeah, so when the team released in June the Hilt as alpha, we wanted to be in alpha for two reasons. First reason is we wanted people to try it out, although we already knew that it's working because we use it. But the other second reason is because we had a couple of improvements in the pipeline that we wanted to make them before Hilt was going to reach stable version. The first improvement, which was making Hilt available outside Android Gradle modules, it is complete. So that feature, you can already start using it. But then the other feature that the team is actually working on at the moment is adding support to assisted injection. So the people following Hilt might know, and Dagger might know what is this. And so that's coming probably like soon, and that's gonna make it before it reaches stable. So looking forward to that.
Cool, yeah. What's the roadmap of making Android more consistent on different manufacturers? Have software updates broader and more consistent than we have now?
I'll jump on this one. So first, I should point out the obvious, I'll repeat we don't talk about future developments. I should point out the obvious that we do not control what manufacturers and partners do. In fact, that is one of the tenets of the success of Android overall, I would think, is that we offer a platform and manufacturers do what they want. And we cannot force them to then, update to this thing because it doesn't make sense for those devices, that hardware, their business plans, whatever, right? But we can make it easier. I would say we're doing sort of two different things to make it easier for developers and users going forward. One of those is exactly what we're talking about here today, which is unbundled libraries. The toolkit team, which Romain is leading, has for the last few years really focused on all of the unbundled library support as opposed to platform development. They still work on platform development features, but really most of the focus has been on these libraries that you can use way back from many, many API versions for this very reason, so that you can adopt features and actually get them out to your users across all of the versions that they're using. So that's a bigger and bigger focus for the team overall. You can also look at other things like Camera X, which is not just going back in releases, but also handling some of the workarounds for specific devices out in the broad ecosystem, so that you no longer have to handle, the camera capabilities on this manufacturer's device, which are different than the camera capabilities over there. So this is a general approach of the Android team overall, is to offer these things in a way that is larger than the platform, sits on top of the platform, and developers can take on all of these new features and functionality and fixes to spread to their user base wherever they happen to be, right? And the other approach is we're working on platform capabilities like something called Mainline, which is now called something else, and I forget what it is, system updates or something, making it easier for these manufacturers to take the updates that we have and to update their hardware much, much faster. Because basically we're building in, you can think of it as like a low-level layer between the platform and the hardware, where we're making the APIs more consistent, making it much, much easier for manufacturers and partners to actually adopt the releases, because they don't have to create all the glue code between our code and their drivers and their system code. Instead, they can sort of take our blob and implement the APIs in a consistent way, and it's much easier for them to then integrate and qualify that. And that has seen much faster adoption on a lot of devices. So that kind of is the plan going forward, to have these. That was trouble, and then Mainline is another thing where we can actually have these updatable pieces of the platform which don't require API updates, that we can then push out there in a way that manufacturers can consume much more easily. So through these approaches, we want to make it easier for manufacturers to have faster adoption. And through the other approach, we want to make sure that when we come out with new functionality, developers can take it on because they don't have to care about the releases that their users are on.
Awesome, thank you. Any comment about the motivation behind Compose? Is it really the future, and how strongly would you recommend moving to it? So this is kind of more like a yesterday thing, but Romain?
Yeah. So we gave several presentations, for instance, at the Android Developer Summit last year, Google I/O, for the Android 11 beta launch event earlier this year, where I and others went into more details answering that very question. But effectively, we're trying to address several things. One is, I said earlier, we have API regrets and the mistakes were made. And some of those mistakes, it took years to figure out they were mistakes. They made sense when those APIs were designed. So we're trying to redesign a UI toolkit in a way that makes sense for modern applications. And we have reached a state where making large changes to the existing toolkit is becoming extremely difficult because we have to worry about compatibility. Another big reason for us is, with the platform being updated once a year, it means delivering new features or delivering bug fixes. Well, we have one window for that, and that's once a year. And it also doesn't really help you, right? Like, if there's a bug that's been impacting your app for a couple of releases and we finally fixed it, yeah, except your users are still running into that bug because they may not have the latest version of the platform. So us decoupling the UI toolkit from the platform is the best way to give you like all those features and bug fixes. And on top of it, you are more in control of your own destiny. That is, if we release a new version of Compose that for some reason doesn't work for you, or we change an API and you're not ready for it, like, it won't affect your app. Like any library, as long as you don't take the new version, you're fine. Like, we're not going to break your application in any way. And beyond that, of course, there's Kotlin. We believe that with the API choices we made, like, it's much better or it's much, at least, nicer to write code for Compose than it is for the existing toolkit. As of whether or not it's really the future, yes, it is. A large chunk of the Android toolkit team is working actively on Compose. This is where most, if not all, new development is going on right now. We are going to keep supporting the UI toolkit, for the foreseeable future, because not only are there tons of apps using it, but the platform is still using the existing UI toolkit. So it's not going to disappear, right? Like, we're not going to mark it deprecated or remove it from the platform. But expect new features to stop coming in the UI toolkit, like, at some point. I can't say like when or how, because it will depend on the features. But yeah, Jetpack Compose, we believe, is very much our future. And moving to it, don't move to it just yet. I think, right now the alpha is a great time to explore it and maybe try to use it in your application. If you have a debug screen, a debug menu, or like a setting screen somewhere where, you can start playing with Compose without impacting too much the core of your app, I think that would be great, because you can give us feedback. And we've been making tons of changes based on the feedback that we received. But only you can answer that question, right? Like, once we hit 1.0 especially, we'll give you as much information as we can with respect to like moving to Compose. But the key is that Compose can work with existing views, and views can work with Compose. So you can mix and match both of them together in the same screen if you want. So it's very much like moving to Kotlin. So you will be able to adopt gradually. You won't have to rewrite your application. You can just write the next screen or even the next fragment just in Compose and take it from there.
Hey, Pamela, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Hey, we're going to have to end it there. The problem is I've seen Chet eyeing his apple fritter the whole time. And so I'm afraid that he's not going to hold out much longer. So yeah, it's still in the same condition it was 40 minutes ago. You haven't taken a bite, Chet. So I see the sad face. So no, we do need to cut off there. Florina, if you're amenable to this, you and Pamela are set up as the moderators for this panel. I can push the questions to you so that they can get answered in the blog, in the speaker blog on Talk, if you like. We can certainly do that. But we do need to, unfortunately, pull the ripcord here. But thank you all for being with us. Pamela, I'll let you give it a good closing, okay?
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining in the Mad Gang. And me, a random Android developer and enthusiast, thank you so much for droidCon EMEA, especially the A part, because we also include Africa in this one. I'm from South Africa, and it's a sunny day, and I hope you enjoy your weekend and have a great day further. Bye-bye.